Super Metroid. I used to love playing all the old SNES games. However, as I've moved out of my parents' house and into my own place, some of the cartridges ended up lost. I decided, for curiosity's sake, to run by and see if I could find them. At their house, my mom stood at the attic entrance, joking that girls shouldn't love games so much. I shrugged off her comments and continued searching through the boxes. I spotted a box with my name lazily written on it in black marker. As I searched through it, rummaging past old dolls and notebooks, I saw the familiar bold letters, Super Metroid. I grabbed it and pulled it out of the box, grinned at one of my old favorites. I came across Punch-Out! And Super Mario World, and a Final Fantasy or two, took them home with me as well. After I set up my SNES again, I grabbed the Super Metroid cartridge and blew it out thoroughly before putting it in and starting it up. It started normally. Nintendo, 1994. Nintendo presents Metroid 3. I zoom out to the Metroid in the tank with the scientists' corpses and the title, Super Metroid, coming up on the screen, all accompanied by the title music and Metroid screeches. I hit start and started to load up my old profile. Then I remembered my brother deleted all the files on the old cartridge when we were younger as a revenge plot, and I never got near the end of the game again. So as a custom of mine, I selected Samus B and started with the memorable introduction.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
I watched through Samus's speech of how she foiled Mother Brain's plans in fighting Metroids and how she met the larva. I continued through as the game started at Ceres Station. I walked Samus through the blue-tinted station and through the doors to have the first encounter with Ridley. Shuddered a bit as I walked through the room with the dead scientists. Something always seemed weird to me about that room. I then arrived at the room with the Metroid capsule in it. The Metroid's colors were distorted. The red was purple, and the green was yellow. I assumed, since the cartridge had gone through quite a bit of fighting between me and my brother, it might have gotten the colors mixed up with dying Metroid of the final boss. I walked over to it, and shot around for a bit, then walked back to the door to start the battle. Ridley's orange-yellow eye glowed. Then his entire form appeared, letting out a roar as he grabbed the Metroid and flew up. I hopped around, shooting him until he turned red, dropped the Metroid capsule, then swooped down to retrieve it. I shot him a few more times until he flew up, then at the screen disappearing. Emergency. Self-destruct sequence activated. Evacuate colony immediately. Came up, including the 60-second timer. I rushed Samus through the station, got to the exit, and she blasted off in her ship before the colony exploded. Arriving on planet Zebus, I took Samus inside and went down to get the morphing ball. Went around for a bit to get some missiles, saved at the station, went back to get the bombs and fight the Chozo statue. I grabbed the bombs and waited for the statue to come to life. It shakily stood up, screeched and started to attack. I jumped back and forth over it, shooting missiles at it until its stomach burst and its head fell off and it collapsed. I collected the health and missiles and left. I went back to the save station and, after saving, turned into a morph ball and dropped some bombs on the wall. It crumbled and I rode through to go from Crateria to Brinstar. After going through for a while, I came to the spore spawn. Instead of spores falling from the ceiling, little fireballs fell. I guess it mixed Ridley's fireballs with spores. As he pops out, it seems he'd already taken some damage. His green had faded to a brown as it does when you're about to kill him. He swung around for a bit and then opened his mouth. His core was swollen and red. I hopped on a ledge and shot a missile at his core. He turned light brown and then died. Health and missiles littered the room. I grabbed it all up and hopped up to get super missiles. I went through more of the game, grabbing power-ups and eventually got to the next boss, Kraid. He also seemed to have taken much damage recently. His eyes were lit up yellow as if he was getting ready to roar. I shot at him, questioningly starting the battle. The game was simply getting boring with the cartridge issues. Kraid let out a loud roar as he fell to the ground and died. I continued through the game, bosses always having major damage before the battle, and their colors and attacks altered. Rockameyer's colors were chilled blue instead of burning red, and one missile sent him back almost as far as 2 super missiles. Fantoon's eye looked bloodshot, and his body was already darkened with damage. His fire was large and blazing red rather than small and light blue. When I got to Meridia, the swimming enemies weren't there, and the water had been somewhat drained. Botchmoon seemed to be stuck in a hole, and one missile killed him. I couldn't electrocute Dragon for some reason, so I ended up having to attack him with super missiles. He was foaming purple at the mouth, similar to Mother Brain, and he was already rather damaged. The Golden Chozo moved extremely slowly and wouldn't attack. I finally got to Ridley again. As I made my way through Norfair to attack him, his loud roar rang out randomly. I got to his lair and stood on the platform, waiting for battle. Ridley appeared, a darker purple-black than usual. He roared loudly, but the roar was distorted. It was much deeper and much louder. The sound of it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I continued through the battle and cheered as I killed the wretched thing, continuing to Touraine to fight Mother Brain. None of the turrets shot at Samus, which I found weird. I hopped over to the tank with Mother Brain. It was already busted. I shrugged and shot a missile into her, and the floor fell away to the room. Her screech was slowed down, and the foam from her mouth was a dark red. Her pulsing brain was bright, signaling damage, as was her body. Mother Brain immediately started charging up her unmissable beam. The rainbow flashing beam shot at Samus, and drained much more energy than I remembered. She started charging up the next one, and of course, the Metroid with the same color issues flew in and sucked the energy out of her. Mother Brain fell into a fetal position as the Metroid flew to Samus and started to give her energy. Mother Brain drooled more deep red. She came back to life and shot the Metroid, killing it instantly. This didn't faze me. It's what's supposed to happen. But the Metroid dying so suddenly, rather than fighting, did. Not only were the bosses extremely weak, the Metroid was too. Samus stood up with the Hyper Beam and started to kill Mother Brain. 10 seconds and she was dead. Instead of the countdown to evacuate the planet, nothing happened. Then a text box came up, but instead of evacuate, it said, "Are you happy?" I pressed a few buttons and another one came up. "All of them are gone. Are you happy?" And it came up with a yes or no option. I thought about the gameplay. It was rather boring. No, I most certainly was not happy. I selected no. The room slowly filled with lava. I jumped with the screw attack and continued space jumping in the air to stay out of it. After a few moments, it filled the entire room. Samus sunk to the bottom. I panicked, trying to find an exit, but the room had none. Samus's health tanks dropped rapidly until it froze. It then went to the white death screen with Samus's armored sprite. Instead of bursting open as it normally does with the final cry sound, small red pixels dripped from the seams of the suit. Afterwards, the suit burst open, and Zero Suit Samus fell to the ground in a pose like the dead scientists, but the animation of the sprite showed she was still alive. Ridley's distorted roar was heard. He swooped down, grabbed Samus. She was posed like the suit burst pose, as Ridley crushed her in his claws. He dropped her down on the white screen. I waited, pressing buttons and wondering if it froze. I heard Samus's final cry ring out repeatedly, high-pitched and loud. It made me drop the controller and clutch my ears. It went to the game over screen, yet the text was changed. You failed. Continue? Yes. No. I wasn't done with this game yet. I can't believe I acted like this game was a person, and I hated it, but I did. Started up my last save before Mother Brain. I repeated what happened, and when the box came up again, I selected yes. It took about 30 seconds off my time to escape, so I had to power run through the planet frantically. I got to the ship with about 10 seconds to spare and tried to enter. It wouldn't let me in until the very last second. I had finished the game. What the hell was up with this cartridge? After the credits, the Samus sprite with red dripping from the seams came up at the end with a thumbs up. "See you next mission" came up, and the screen went black. The roar of Ridley, the screech of the Chozos, the Spore Spawn's wheeze, Braid's growl, Crocomeyer's scream, Phantoon's hiss, Foxmoon's groan, Dragon's gurgling, Mother Brain's squeal, and Samus's final cry all rang out in cycle, growing rapidly louder. The jump I got from it knocked my heavy metal chair to the side, basically snapping the cartridge in half as it fell over on top of it. I let out an irritated groan and ripped the SNES out of the wall, tossing it to the side. I sat on the floor and held my head in my hands, going over the events of the game. The sound of Samus's final cry still sends chills down my spine, making memories of the cartridge flow back.